Right, so Job is the cry for a mediator, someone who understands me, who knows me, and also can go before God with me or for me. So the historic purpose may be that, this is scholars talking about that. Moses perhaps saw God's dealing with Job, a parallel as to why God allowed his people to suffer. A lot of questions, when you think about how much the Israelites went through in 430 years of bondage in Egypt, especially when you go back and you understand the history that, the people of Israel were the people of Joseph, and Joseph actually saved the empire of Egypt from going under with his, interpretation of Pharaoh's dream, and then his plan on preserving food so that people could live through the famine. So it's not you can understand how the people would try to say why they would be asking questions about, Job's, why they would be asked questions about suffering. So there's this cry for mediation and the cry for suffering, the answer for suffering. And I would say the important thing, we'll talk and we'll just keep moving here. But Job reminds people of his providential purposes in allowing pain. And I'm not going to pretend that statement is a comfort. Like, we've all had moments of pain, moments of great disappointment, and we've been left asking God why. And we're going to get to this point of the question grid. I'm going to show that to you. But again, I said earlier that reason is not the answer. Like, reasons do not answer problems. Relationships do. And it might be that, in relationships, when people have, tremendous moments of pain, just being there is enough without saying so much. Because really the things that you try to say aren't very fulfilling to those people at that moment. And, I think the thing that we see through Job is that the pain happens, and then the pain ultimately solidifies Job's understanding of God's presence and God's eternity, the eternal nature of God, and then, it just progresses through this. Right, next. So a doctrinal purpose, like if we could give a doctrine, like the doctrine of pain. Is there a doctrine of pain? It's like I haven't really heard it. I've heard some say like we should have the doctrine of sufferology. Like that should be like a part of any systematic theology book. Like there should be a way to suffer. And Job gives us a little bit, but suffering is like personal. Suffering is emotional. Suffering is physical. And so the intensity of that suffering and the intensity of the relationship that develops in that suffering is, I think it can be answered by a statement like this: the presence of pain is allowed by the providence of God for the purifying and perfecting of his people. So this is the reason sometimes that there is pain. So, okay, the next one. All right, Christ is in Job. Okay, in the cries for a mediator, we see that Job 9:33 says this, neither is there any daysman or betwixt us that might lay his hand upon us both. There is no mediator. A daysman is like an advocate. There's no advocate between God and me that might lay his hand on us both. Okay, of course, in that point in time, Jesus hadn't come. Jesus swaddled himself in the clothes of flesh. It says the babe in the manger was in swaddling clothes, but behind the clothes that he was wrapped up in, there's more swaddling there. Flesh is like not a perfect thing since the fall. Jesus was a perfect human being, lived a perfect life, and he took on the flesh of man. And so this is the cry of Job. In 33:23, we see this cry also. 33:23, it says, if there be a messenger with him, an interpreter, 1,000 among 1,000, to show unto man his uprightness. Now here's the other cry, that there should be someone, 1,000. This is like really one among 1,000 to show unto man his uprightness. An interpreter, a messenger, an interpreter. There should be a messenger. There should be someone to interpret who God is. There should be, this one, which is a figure of speech. There should be like this one, one great person who could show unto man his uprightness. So this is the cry throughout Job. Now, Job 19:25 is really the idea that a word from God could be so stuck or so deep in a person that even in the midst of the kind of trial that Job is experiencing, there is still this identity and this understanding of of who God is and what he will do. And so this is like one of the great verses, I think, of the Bible, and particularly of this book. It says, I know, and the structure is, I know, I am fully convinced, I am absolutely sure that my Redeemer lives, and that he shall stand at the latter day upon the earth. So that is like, if you're wondering the secret to suffering, is God giving us an understanding, a secret to suffering? Again, like you could go through the whole progression of reasons. I am suffering because I was a jerk. I was a jerk and I offended somebody, so no one likes me. Everybody hates me. All I can do is eat the worms that, of the thoughts that like how much of a jerk I could be. That's a reason. I didn't look both ways when I crossed the street and I got whacked by a car. It's a true story. It happened to me. Still feel it every now and then on a cold day. But you can pile the reasons up. But here you see Job understood his relationship. I know the language here is very powerful and personal. I am fully convinced and absolutely persuaded that my Redeemer is alive. And that at a certain point in time, he and myself will stand together on the earth at the latter day. It says, verse 26, though my skin may be destroyed by worms, my body, yet in my flesh I shall see God. My Redeemer lives, and my Redeemer will make sure that I live forever. And so if you're looking for the secret, what did Job hold on to all through his... It says that Job never forsook his integrity, the thing that made him who he was. And what made Job who he was? It was this concept of God. There is someone coming who's going to redeem me from this body of death. And I know that he lives now, and that there will be a moment when we'll be on earth together, and I am going to see him in a resurrection life. Because Job does talk about death and what it will be like to die, and he's acquainted with death because he loses children and all that. So, okay. Next. So the primary theme concerns the suffering of the righteous. And the suffering of the righteous is significant because it answers Satan's accusation that God has to buy us with blessings. Like that, if you read through the first part of Job, you get two encounters. Now, this is the position of Satan. Satan has been cast to the earth, but apparently he still has privilege to come and speak to God. So we know that Satan was a cherub, and cherubs have intimate relationships with the holiness and the presence of God. So over the mercy seat, 2 cherubs look down on the mercy seat, the blood there. And then 2 cherubs were guarding the way to the tree of life with a flaming sword after Adam and Eve sinned and were driven from the garden. And then we know that cherubs were stitched into the veil that was, figures of cherubs were stitched into the veil that separated the holy place from the rest of the tabernacle. So cherubs had an idea with the presence of God. Satan had something to do with the presence of God, and even in his rebellious state, living outside of his full privilege, he still had certain privileges that God allowed him to. And he is the accuser of the brethren day and night. Satan is still bringing our failures to God every day. And God is just saying the blood is over there on the seat. You're a cherub. The cherubs on the mercy seat look at the blood. You have to look at the blood. The blood's satisfied. The redemption is accomplished. So that was Satan's primary thing. When he comes to God says, "Have you noticed my servant Job?" And Satan says, yeah, I see him. It's easy for that. The way that you allow him to be successful, he's got like great kids, he's got lots of money, he's got lots of sheep, lots of camel. He has no need. No wonder you have bought him. You have bought him. That's why he worships you. And that's, Satan's great accusation is that, and that was Satan's thing. Like he could not find, something in him, could not reconcile the fact that there was something greater than him. The essence of, I am the best, but there is something greater, and he couldn't reconcile that in his mind and heart. All right, let's talk a little bit. Why don't you talk a little bit among each other? The couple of kinds of suffering. Legitimate suffering, illegitimate suffering. All right? So take 5 minutes. You can form some groups here. Is this good? I know, it's like me asking you to pray with your neighbor. I know. I do it in church service, It's like, stand up, talk, okay, get in groups and talk about topic number one for a couple minutes, talk about legitimate suffering and then illegitimate suffering, and come up with a couple of words that define suffering, and we'll talk, all right? And I'm going to finish my water here. So. If you're doing this on the DVD, you can talk to someone in your house there or the class that's with you. All right, how are your discussions going? Okay. Legitimate suffering. I mean, okay, I purposely left these words hanging there for you. Like, do you, in your group, you can tell me, do people get what they deserve sometimes? How? Yes.
It says in the Bible that people reap the righteous rewards of the
Okay.
what they've sinned, how they've sinned, they reap the results of it.
That's right.
And so
God is not mocked. Whatsoever a man shall sow, that he shall also reap. So, yes.
we said that legitimate suffering is where God puts us into a place where we can grow through it.
Okay.
We can get to know Him better through it.
Okay.
Illegitimate suffering is brought on through us rebelling against God's will and God's plan. And because we rebel against God's will and God's plan, we go through problems that really hurt us, actually.
Okay, so legit suffering, growth, and drawing and closer, maybe you would come closer to God. Illegitimate suffering is just suffering that doesn't, okay, good idea, good. Anyone else with an opinion about it? Illegitimate suffering, any words? Yes?
Okay, so he just said, he was like, illegitimate suffering is when you go off and do your own thing,
Yeah.
like apart from what God wants. But like, can't God turn that around?
Yes.
So would that be legit or illegit?
Well, I guess illegitimate suffering could at some point, like the thing is that our hands are, that we are, all things work together for good, like all things are not good, like Romans 8:28 does say that, all things work together for good. Illegitimate suffering is maybe suffering that you may be, legitimate suffering, maybe these are the wrong words I'm using, but illegitimate suffering is like, maybe a suffering of selfishness. Yes?
Suffering is when your mother tell you or your parents tell you you can't go to the party. And when you come home, you have to suffer the consequences.
Okay, there you go. You break the house rules and you face it. Okay, first, John.
What we were saying is that legitimate suffering is something that allows us to grow with God,
Yeah.
allows us to get to know God, and illegitimate is something that someone else can see happening to us that allows them to get to know God.
Could be. All right. Garvey.
Well, in fact, maybe it might not be good words where all things work for the good. Illegitimate could become legitimate if you learn a lesson, but if you don't.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Yeah, it could be. Legitimate suffering is like, angelic conflict, like there is the idea that the angels are watching how we respond to situations that way. Yes?
If I'm hanging out with a bunch of guys, we get caught for something because they brought me into it and I'm caught.
Yeah. Yeah, Proverbs is a good book to look at, like it shows you how to avoid trouble spots. So, okay, so that was good. Good idea. Okay. All right, so the breakdown. Yes?
For example, Jesus never experienced illegitimate suffering.
Yeah.
It was always legitimate. But
Yeah.
David experienced illegitimate suffering because of his sin and Bathsheba.
Yeah. No, that could be, yeah. David's suffering is outlined in Psalm 32. The pain of David's sin is in Psalm 32. His repentance is in Psalm 51. Okay. All right, so the breakdown of Job here, sort of an outline here. Chapters 1 and 2 reveals the satanic backdrop of who Satan is and what he does. Very interesting point. Satan, because he has forsaken his position, he is constantly moving. That's the thing you need to know. It says that when God asks, "Where have you been?" he says, "Roaming to and fro on the earth." And, that's a constant kind of thing to understand. Satan is a restless being. He has forsaken and alienated himself from the position he was created for. So if you're looking for like a real insight into the strategy and the emotion of Satan, it's good like... Satan is like, he's just not, he's alienated from God, and we'll see it later, the things that talk about what he is. And so he's constantly looking. So in chapter 3, Job sees the suffering as a puzzle. He's trying to figure it out and get his mind around it. The friends from chapter 4 to 31 view suffering as a penalty. Like, Job, there's got to be something wrong in your life. Like they're saying, like there is, you are suffering legitimately. You are suffering, there's a reason why you are suffering. And the reason is because obviously there's sin that you haven't confessed in your life. And then Elihu, the fourth person that speaks, he speaks as suffering as purifying, like as it's a different kind of thing. It's a way. And it is... in a sense, a suffering person knows God in a different way that a person who doesn't suffer does. I'm just saying that. It's like, okay, we have to understand, like we see God this way, and we think that, we are created in the image of God. We sense and we feel pain. And, we know that God is all-powerful, but we also know that we are like God. And so we know that Jesus wept. We know that Jesus felt the pain of the nails. We know that Jesus felt the scorning and the mockery that people threw into his face. And we should not think that God is not affected by that. So a person who suffers understands a little bit more about the way that God feels every day. It is not a happy moment when someone dies without, God is not willing that any man should perish, but that all should come to repentance. That's a Bible verse that tells us. I think it's in 1 Peter. God is not, so to think that God is like, I know there's the other verse that says God laughs at some of those, but, there is a painful, there's a pain that God experiences with the rejection of his creature. And to think otherwise is to reject the idea that we are created in the image of God. How do I know that God feels like the kind of pain that I feel? It's because, God made me in his image. So, our emotion is not something detached from his emotion. So if we are, Elihu sort of explains this like Job, like you are learning something about who God is by the things that you are suffering. All right? Because there is like and it is, I just have to believe that is the way God is. There is, when you see somebody, someone has to deal with maybe a child who's mentally or physically challenged, handicapped in some of these ways, and you're wondering, like, how does a parent, like, live with that? Like you look at your own self and you say, I just don't know how you could deal with that. But then I came to an understanding, talking to someone at their house, I understand, like, the parent has something of the heart of God that I do not have. Because here is like this, really, for lack of a better word, here is this, you didn't ever dream that this child would be imperfect in this way. That maybe he couldn't talk, that maybe he couldn't walk, that maybe he was in emotional turmoil all the time, but that person understands something about God and his dealing with imperfect people that I don't understand. There's a different level there, because this person wakes up every morning, deals with this child, and then doesn't take the child and put it on the doorstep and send him away to a dump or something like that. Loves the child. The child has very little capacity to express anything but maybe, laughing and giggling and everything like that, and that has its own way. But this, just think about the imperfection that God deals with every moment of every day. And then, you see, like, okay, why does God allow this to happen in some families? And we don't really know the answer to that. Like I said, the reasons that we could give are never satisfactory. But if there is relationship, then there is more of an answer. And so, like, a child like that or a family member like that has to be cared for in that kind of connection, so what kind of relationship develops between that person and the person serving and caring for that? What kind of relationship develops? Like, sometimes some of the most amazing relationships develop that way. And that person serving that and caring for somebody like that has an understanding of the heart of God that some of us will never have, because God doesn't trust us with that kind of position. It's like, so. Anyway, all right. Chapters 38 to 42 of Job, it says God providentially allows suffering in his sovereignty. It's like it's a part of what he allows. And like I said, we could look at God and say, well, you got to give me a reason for it. You're going to read through the book of Job, and you're never going to hear God tell Job, Satan came, and he said that you were just serving me because you were blessed, and I knew different, and I allowed you to go through all of this just to show you off for Satan. And he didn't, and you were such a great guy. Way to go, Job. God never says that to him. Job goes through all of it, and God never gives him the reason. But the relationship becomes something amazing. So, I'm not going to expect you to wrap your whole brain around that kind of statement. Like, reasons are never the real answer for the problems. Relationships are. And but it is like a profound statement, and we just have to consider it. Like, I could stack up a lot of reasons and still be very empty. But if I have a fulfilling relationship with God and a fulfilling relationship with great people in my church and in my family and friendships that are amazing, then I don't need so much reasons. And even if there is trouble, I have the relationship to help me in the trouble. Right? Last thing is 31 times God is called Almighty. So that means that he's got all power to fix anything at any point in time. But he doesn't always choose to allow the thing to come to some sort of conclusion that we would like to. It's not like a sitcom where everyone makes up at the end after 27 minutes and 14 commercials. Hey, surprise, here we are, or like a Disney kind of school thing. Everyone's dancing on the roof. Yeah, they're singing a song all together. We didn't even rehearse this, but look how in tune we are. Wow, that's just not the way life is. Anyway, okay, so we have the drama, but not in the sense of drama, but the sense of think of the whole scene, just think of this as you're watching a play or something like that. And there's the behind the scenes idea, what's going on, who's pulling all the strings, and then on the scene, what's happening right with Job, and then beyond the scene, what's happening in the future. And so we get these angles, we see these three angles here. The first thing is the curtain comes down and we get a glimpse of how Satan comes before God, and God says, okay, you can do this. Bang, 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 things happen. Job doesn't curse God. Satan comes to God again. Yeah, he's fine. He's lost his family. He's lost his wealth and everything like that. But if you touch his skin, if you touch his body, if he gets sick, if he has a hip out of whack or something like that, he's going to curse you. Okay. God says, okay, you can touch his body, but you can't kill him. And, and Job still doesn't curse God in those things. All right. Job is the afflictor. Job is the afflicted. Satan is the afflictor. And so the three strikes that come, the three quick kind of things, prosperity, his posterity, and his physical condition. So his family, his riches, his wealth, all of his possessions, and then the posterity, his family, his 10 sons and daughters, and then his physical condition. These three things. So Job is basically the accuser, to what we talked about it earlier, Revelation 12:10. He's the accuser of the brethren. Satan, diabolos, that word means slanderous accuser. And that's really Satan's way. Lucifer meant bearer of light. He forsook that thing, and now he is a slanderous accuser. He accuses God to us, he accuses us to God. And it's just this vicious cycle. They're only serving you because you've given them all that they need. Yeah, you've given them a great wife, you've given them a great family, and take that away and everything will fall apart. That's what he would love to, that's what Satan really enjoys happening. He's a ship that's sinking, and he's going to try and take as many people down to the bottom with him as possible. And that's basically the way he is. He's a crab. If you know anything about crabs, that one crab will survive. One crab, if you put one crab in a pot, you got to keep a lid on it. You get 3 or 4 in a pot, you don't have to leave a lid on it at all. Because when one tries to get up to the top, one of the crabs will pull them back down to the bottom, and they just can't stand to let each other get away, and they'll just keep each other in the pot all the time. They just pull each other back down to the bottom. It's kind of the whole kind of whatever it is, whatever they do. What do they call it? Scavenger mentality. But that's the truth. You have one crab, you got to keep the pot on because he's trying to get out. But if he's got 4, hey, we're all in this together. We're all going to burn. We're going to be a tasty treat for some Baltimorean tonight. And, we're not going to be blue anymore. We're all going to be orange. But you're not leaving because I'm not going to let you leave. And that's basically Satan's whole, in a simplified metaphor, that's the way Satan is pulling everyone down with him. Okay, next. Okay, so here's the reality. We have to talk about the reality of Satan because he's such a principal figure in this. We know that Lucifer was a creation of God, wise and beautiful, anointed cherub, situated in an amazing place. He was subject to God, and he was given a rule, a reign, a space of authority. And he still possesses that. He's the prince and the power of the air. Ephesians tells us that. He still has a certain authority in the dimension that we live in. And part of the reason that we have to live in that is because we listen to him. Adam listened to him, and by extension, we are under that now. So It's like creation is like a driverless car, okay? God said, here's creation. He gave Adam a learner's permit. You follow the rules, you drive the car, creation's going to go the way it's supposed to go. But Adam stepped out of that, and now creation is like careening all over the place because its driver submitted to something outside of the place it was supposed to be. So that's the best way to describe like Adam as the federal head of creation and why creation groans. It's a driverless car. You know, like creation is careening out of control because Adam was supposed to have his hands on the wheel, having dominion over it. That's what God gave him. But Adam listened to what Satan said about mistrusting God, and now, you know, Adam is out of the car and creation is careening. It's like, and he's still trying to catch up to the whole thing. He's like chasing the car down the street as it's riding. You ever do that? You probably don't have it usually happens if you have like a standard transmission and you forget to put the parking brake on. Sometimes your car starts rolling as you get out of it, you know? Yeah, it's kind of like, huh? Yeah. Yeah.
And I jump out the truck.
There it goes. There you are. That's creation. So now we are, you know, Satan is a prince and a power for a space and season, and pretty much we are under that because we listen to him, and God is not, you know, because of the nature of love, God does not force us to return his love. So, you know, we chose another message. You know, Adam chose another message, and we choose other messages. So, okay. So here's Satan's real issue, and this is maybe the best way to describe the personality of Satan. Why he's disappointed. He has a hatred of his position. Now he's disappointed. So he was appointed to be this way, and then he wasn't satisfied that, so now he's disappointed. And now his position is not satisfying to him because it's centered on himself and not centered on glorifying God. So he's confounded, so he has a hatred of his foundation. So like you see, the second part of the word is given a prefix, and it says, so now he's confounded. So his foundation, the foundation of his life is like he has a hatred of that. Like he can't, you know, he would like for us to understand like maybe as Luke Skywalker understood. Like, and Obi-Wan Kenobi taught him that there is a good side of the Force and there's an evil side of the Force, and everything has to balance out. That's Star Wars doctrine. That is not the doctrine of the Bible. You know, Satan was made by God to give glory to God. That was the foundation of his being. So he's confounded now. He doesn't have a status, and he roams to and fro. He's confused. He has a hatred of his relationship. Fusion, that's a good kind of thing. Things related to each other. We're meant to be fused together as members in particular of the body of Christ. We're made for each other. We're made to be a human race to glorify God. But Satan has this hatred now because he basically has no fellowship. Demons do not have the kind of fellowship. They can operate to a certain point, and maybe if there's a good book, This Present Darkness, I can't remember the name of the author, Frank Peretti, This Present Darkness, talks about like how the demons orchestrate this whole amazing thing, this whole amazing deception in this little town, and then all of a sudden one demon gets jealous of another demon and the whole thing falls apart. Because the demons are full of jealousy and envy and covetousness, and this one wants this power and this one wants, and everything starts flying apart. And like Satan can only do so much. Like Satan thought that man would bow down and worship him and serve him, but man actually decided to serve himself, not Satan. So we don't bow down to Satan so much. We don't sell our souls to Satan. We really can't do that, regardless of what Ozzy Osbourne might tell you. He cannot sell his soul to Satan. The Bible says you can't. Psalm 119 says, my soul is continually in my hand. So I can think that I sold it to Satan. Satan can deceive me in that way. But so he has a hatred of his relationship. There's a hatred of it. He's not fused to anything. He's a loner and always will be a loner. And he's surrounded by groups of loners. And, they can go for a little season, but then at some point, that all breaks apart. And then this last one, he's alienated. He hates the idea that he originated in the mind of God and that he owes his very existence to the Creator. It's like I said, he's trying to create this concept that me and God are equals. And there's going to be a showdown, and that's coming one day. And it's just not that way. God made Lucifer for himself, for him, to bring glory to him. And for a season, he did it. He was the light bearer. He did it. But Satan has chosen to go this way, not center. I have a little, here it is. Here's maybe the best explanation of satanic mindset. This is from Larry Crabb, and he's a Christian psychologist. He wrote this book called Soul Talk. And here, you just read this. A beautiful, blessed, and happy angel of God somehow got it in his head that something might actually bring him more pleasure than revolving his life around God. Okay? So that's like, if you look at that, that is like most, if you're wondering what Satan's problem is and why he's like against God, he got it in his head that, it would be better if life revolved around me than around God. God made me, but life should be around me. I got all this going on. Lots of great looks, lots of great songs, lots of great wisdom, all kinds of stuff. Like, why should all the glory go to God? And, but this is like a great, somehow, a blessed, happy angel of God got it in his mind that it would be better if things revolved around me than revolved around God. And we see the disaster that has created in the universe and in the world. Okay. All right. So what happens? So we've got Satan, we've got the two parties here involved. Job loses things. So we got some things that happen here. First, after Job loses everything, loses his money and his family, Job tore his mantle, tore his clothing, shaved his head, and fell down upon the ground and worshiped. This is Job 1, verse 20. And then Job arose, rent his mantle, shaved his head, fell down upon the ground and worshipped, and said, this is how he worshiped, I came out of my mother's womb naked, and naked shall I return there. The Lord gave, the Lord has taken away, blessed be the name of the Lord. Sounds like a song. And in all this, Job sinned not, nor did he charge God foolishly. So he answers wisely. His first answer to everything that happens with his substance and his family, Job, this is the way Job answers. I'm not saying that this, I don't think he said this with a smile. It's like, I don't think he sang the song, blessed be the name of the Lord. You give and take away. I'm sure it was more like, I don't think that's the way it went. I mean, it's a nice song and we sing it. You give it, that's kind of thing. But I don't, and that's where this song comes from. I'm just saying, like, some of the conflictions of Christian music. It sort of happens sometimes. This is the context of the story. Job lost his, Job's 10 sons and daughters just had houses fall on top of them. And he got the message, raiders came and stole everything, and then a wind came and blew the house down on your children. Oh, blessed be the name. It just wasn't that way. I mean, it just, in the context of what it is, it's just, Job, said this is, and I think he, it says he worshiped God, and what does that mean in terms of, so Job endured this, and he allowed this, and then the Satan asked for another opportunity, another shot of him, and of course Job becomes sick, covered with boils, and he took a piece of pottery to scrape himself. That says that in verse 8 of chapter 2. And this is like one of the most maligned people in the Bible is Job's wife. But you should realize that when you're this close to somebody and you see him covered with boils and he's suffering, you might wish that he would curse God. She says, "Do you still retain your integrity? Curse God and die." It's like she knew her husband. Like she's saying, "Look, I know that you're right with God, but look at you. look at you. There's a pain in her heart at what her husband has become. And I'm going to tell you something, like don't think she gets away with this statement, okay? Don't malign her until you've been in that kind of situation and you've seen a loved one in this kind of thing. Her heart towards her husband is like, come on, like just curse God and then he'll kill you. And I mean, so this is a painful emotional expression. And I like his answer. He said to her, you speak like one of the foolish women speaks. He doesn't say that you are a fool. He doesn't point to her and say, fool. Why would I curse God? She says, why are you talking this way? I see this exchange like this. He's in pain. She's got a pain of heart. He's got a pain in his body. She's lost 10 children. He's lost 10 children. And now she's about to lose. She just doesn't want to see him suffer anymore. Scraping himself with pottery. If you're watching someone who's so much covered with boils that he's scraping himself with a piece of a dish or something like that, you might want to say, like, can we just put this person out of his misery? It's like, can we just call hospice and just let it go? It's like, so don't, until you're in that situation. So, Job's wife and Martha get a lot of bad messages. Like Martha was consumed with serving, and Jesus, Mary listened, but Martha, if there weren't any Marthas in the world, we'd never eat. I'm just telling you that. Don't wish that, all right? And if it was a Mary world, not a lot would get done. So it's like how to have a Mary heart in a Martha world. It's like, oh yeah, really? You're really thinking about that? I'm sure the book is probably decent, but it's like it's a stupid title. I'm sorry if you wrote that book and you listened to that. I'm just sorry. It's like we need Martha and Mary. It's like a part of the grand design. Anyway, but his wife, the husband says, he doesn't say you are a fool. He says, you're like, how could you think like this? And then he rebukes her gently. And then after this, we get the strange silence of his friends. The friends come, they sit down on the ground 7 days and 7 nights. They just don't talk to him. It's like, I'm not so sure he was in the mood to hear anything they had to say. But it's like, would you just like circle these guys and just like circle your friends in pain and just like give them the silent treatment? So this is where Job is at this point. Another thing that you should remember about Job's wife is, any of you had children in here? Okay. So, all right. So how about women? You had children in here? Okay. You know the pain of childbirth. She had 10 and they were all grown. She's going to have 10 more. So she's going to have 10 more pregnancies. So just like, Job's wife says something like this. So she's going to have, 10 more seasons of labor to come when she thought it was all done. So just keep that in mind before you like criticize, why would she say this and did she get away with it? It's like she's going to have 10 more children. And there's a joy there, but there's pain in childbirth. So there is. All right. There you see, okay, that's like a nice picture. Like his friends are like, should we say anything to him at all? Oh, the next one looks, I got another picture. Where is it? Where is it? Okay, sorry. It's coming back here. Okay, let's take a break and then we'll come back to this why chapter because it's going to take some explanation. And once I get started, I don't really want to stop that. Okay, so you got 10 minutes. Why? Because that's how many minutes I want to give you. All right, and then we'll come back and go through this. All right.